Hi guys, Mr. Hescock's back, trying to finish up Chapter 6, Section 3 today. From the last section, there was a lot about isolation that leads to speciation. Isolation is being separated so that different groups cannot interbreed. Speciation causes when one species evolves into several different species. So we're going to talk about several different types of evolution today, the things that have been used for evolution. You can see that you'll have your homework as the review. We're getting close to a quiz and a test, and we'll be getting there shortly. So there's lots of things that were out there that support evolution. You know, Darwin's theory is backed by all these observations based on fossils and based on observations of how organisms survive in their environment. If you come up with a hypothesis and you run your experiment and you have proof, it can become a theory. If that theory is proven over and over again, that's when it becomes accepted. If it's proven and proven and proven and proven and proven and proven and proven, then that theory could become a scientific law, like the law of gravity. So some of the types of evidence that we scientists use, most of it comes from fossils. So when we look at fossils, we're looking at ancestors. The ancestors are earlier forms of organisms that have evolved into modern day organisms. In this picture here, this is a timeline or a fossil record of the horse. Now, Eohippus has these 3 toes. And those 3 toes are different than the hooves of feet today. This right here is Eohippus, and these are his toes. And these toes may have even had webbed feet. And that webbed feet spread apart and actually helped keep Eohippus from sinking into the mud, because Eohippus right here was about the same size as a small dog. But over time, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is the modern horse here, and it only has a hoof or a single toe. And that happens as the world went through an ice age. It actually got drier, and they moved into colder regions where it wasn't as muddy. If you watch this video, it'll talk about Eohippus. There's a picture of what they think he might have looked like. Some other types of structures that give us evidence. So these are biological evidence. Biological evidence are going to be looking at things like vestigial organs. Vestigial is an organ that is reduced and unused. This picture here shows your appendix. I've had plenty of students who had to have their appendix taken out. It does nothing for you as a human. But in a dog, the appendix actually makes some secretions that help the dog if it chews on like rotten meat, or, I had a dog growing up that was always dragging in old deer bones out of the woods and chewing on them. If you would chew on an old dead deer bone, you would get so sick because of the bacteria. But dogs have this appendix that helps prevent that. Snakes actually have legs that are vestigial in the front and in the back, where they used to have legs in a previous organism. Homologous structures, and in your book they call this similar structures. So in this picture here, you can see the forelimbs or the front limbs of humans, cats, whales, and bats. What I find interesting is they all look like they have fingers. Now the cat's paw is all covered up, but if you go underneath the whale's flipper, you can see the fingers. And real clearly in a bat's wing, the bone structure kind of looks like fingers. So these are all indications of something evolving from what we call a common ancestor. Somewhere along the line, there was a common mammal. To be a mammal, you have warm-blooded, you give birth to live young, you nurse from mammary glands, and you have fur that has very similar structures to these. Another type of biological evidence is what we call embryology. Now, there's a picture in the book, but I got this picture from a website on michigan.edu, and you can see here that now this is a fish, letter A, and then the human over here is letter F. And believe it or not, right here, while we are in embryo stage, we have gills. Now, the gills over time will eventually evolve and slow down, drop down into our chest and become our lungs. But while they're in embryo, they actually have gills, just like the fish. Notice here, there's our tail. We still have a tailbone. You sit every day on your tailbone that is vestigial. It really doesn't do anything other than some of the muscles that control your bowel movements are actually attached to your tailbone. And literally, like the closest related ones here of the rabbit and the man, both being mammals, are very similar. The more similar they are, the more closer the related they are in terms of evolution. There's a better picture of. All right, is it vestigial, homologous, or is it from embryology? So a whale slipper, is that a homologous structure? Is that a vestigial structure? Or is that embryology? Remember the picture of the whale figure, whale flipper? That is a homologous structure. So the next one there is your appendix. Well, they can actually cut your appendix out, so we don't need it. It is not used. So that makes it vestigial. An unborn chicken, meaning an embryo. So this is embryology. The bat's wing. Well, the bat's wing looks like it has fingers. It looks like our hands. So that is homologous structures. Legs on a snake. Well, you can't see them unless you x-ray them, so they are reduced and unused. That makes them vestigial. The hind legs on a whale. Well, the whale doesn't have legs, but they're actually underneath there. That makes them vestigial as well. Homologous structures indicate common ancestors. Oftentimes, embryology, all of these things can be used to indicate common ancestors. So we did the biological evidence, but now we're going to look at genetic evidence. So modern scientists read the DNA. They do the genome of the organism. You compare the genome of the human to the genome of the mouse, and you determine that the mouse is 94% genetically the same as the human. So that tells you that we're very similar. That also tells you that the human and the mouse have a common ancestor. The closer you get, like humans and chimpanzees, you can get to 97, 98% the same. That doesn't mean that we're the same as chimpanzees. It just means that we're very similar and our genetics are very, very similar. So, all right, guys, that takes me to the end of the chapter. Make sure that you're watching these little videos. They are good at explaining all of what we're doing. And until next time, I'm Mr. Hescox. You guys be good, be safe. Start getting ready for your test. See ya.